Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh, and I have the mic on there for a brief second. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you, as always. And on the show today, a lot of important stories. We're going to be taking you through the latest in the election, including a big new proclamation on the debate by Donald Trump about whether or not he would participate. We'll keep you posted on that. And a really brutal clip to watch for the Democratic Party coming off of their big convention potentially bounce. It's looking like they will receive a 2 to 3 point convention bounce, but pretty brutal clip for Bernie Sanders having to go on ABC regarding the Kamala campaign. I do want to get into and talk to you about, and also an incredible piece by someone with a very distant connection to Newsflash that I wanted to get to and highlight that really will tell you what issues will be truly focused on in the next election. And it's not exactly what, surprise, surprise, is being talked about right now. We're also on strike watch for Boeing. About damn time, given all the chaos that's going on inside that company. Also, big updates regarding the war in Gaza. Obviously, the strike, retaliation, Hezbollah strike, so much that we don't know on that front, but also we'll tell you what is holding up the ceasefire there and a potentially major coup happening in, of all places, France. So, as you can tell, there's quite a lot on today's show. I do want to start today with a little bit of a general election kind of whip around here. The Trump and Harris campaigns are again at odds over the presidential debate scheduled on September 10th, and President Trump questioning on social media why he would participate in said debate. I do want to, get a clip of that for you because it is a little bit, it's classic Trump, shall we say, talking about, and he does raise some pretty interesting points. I think it would be probably better, given the situation his campaign is in, where he is kind of on the back foot. He is stewing. He needs something to take him through with the momentum, even though there's still going to be, and I think, he is down. I think he is down relative to, especially to where he used to be, and I think that is impacting his campaign, especially in the morale. And if you continue to kind of stink like this and kind of, I wouldn't say they're in free fall, but they're slowly floating downwards. They're just like a big, heavy rock drifting to the bottom of the ocean right now. I feel like if they don't do something, again, and it sounds like a paradox, but in my opinion it isn't, but they're still in a position where they definitely could, pretty easily win. It's definitely not very much a likelihood. I don't want to get anybody to get that twisted. So he had to, of course, weigh in on Twitter, or not on Twitter even. This is him, I believe, at a Vietnamese restaurant with the Virginia Senate candidate Hung Cao. Virginia is going to be a pretty interesting state, but, here's what he had to say on the debate.
I think ABC should be shut out. I'd much rather do it on NBC. I'd much rather do it on CBS, frankly. I think CBS is very unfair, but the best of the group. And certainly I'd do it on Fox. I'd even do it on CNN. I thought CNN treated us very fairly the last time. I think Jake Tapper was very fair, and Dana Bash was very fair. But they also want to change the rules. The deal was we keep the same rules. Now all of a sudden they want to make a change in the rules because she can't answer questions. Why doesn't she do a couple of question answer? Why doesn't she do something like I'm doing right now? The agreement was that it would be the same as it was last time. In that case, it was muted. I didn't like it the last time, but it worked out fine. I mean, ask Biden how it worked out. It was fine. And I think it should be the same. We agreed to the same rules. Same rules and same specifications. And I think that's probably what it should be. But they're trying to change it.
Yeah, so a bit of a weird scene there, but it is Trump in the restaurant talking about doing the debate. I still probably think he's going to end up doing it, but he's just trying to, make a fuss and get the best conditions he can for himself, which I think is very, very fair. Vice President Kamala Harris' campaign asked that both candidates' microphones be live throughout the full broadcast, which was, again, the change that Trump was talking about. I can see how that would benefit both of them because he does have, Trump's probably his single best, most memorable debate moment that, I think stuck out with a lot of people in terms of him, winning the debate, even though if you look at the broader debate, he did not come off, I think, very well to anybody. But he of course, when otherwise the mics would have been muted under the rules of the last debate. He goes, you should be in jail. So he's very well known in his debating history for his off-the-cuff remarks. Obviously, I think that he said that in 2016 to Hillary Clinton, but he definitely can also run the risk of getting a little bit too carried away with them, as you saw in the first Joe Biden debate, which hurt him. But I think Kamala. I don't know if she's going to be throwing off any kind of cutting, sarcastic side remarks with ease in the way that Trump would. But it's interesting to see. I don't know. I wonder what their thought was about why they wanted that back on for her. So just generally, Trump held 2 campaign events with military themes on Monday, starting the day with a wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia and addressing then a gathering of the National Guard Association in Detroit. His appearances come as the push to the finish line gets fully underway. Election Day just 71 days away now. As of Monday, August 26th, but early voting will begin much earlier. Pennsylvania, perhaps the most important battleground state. Some voting options will start September 16th. In Minnesota and Virginia, Democratic-leading states that are unlikely to be closely contested in a presidential race, but of important down-ballot races, voting starts September 20th. Harris and Walz are going to be on a bus tour of Georgia, where Elizabeth Warren will be in Massachusetts of Massachusetts. She's not going to be in Massachusetts. That would be stupid. But she'll be in Wisconsin to campaign on Harris's behalf. Trump, meanwhile, will be at the Moms for Liberty event, which is going to be not really essentially helping with the weird allegations, but him, whatever things he may say regarding books, and really this Moms for Liberty event highlighting some of the probably the lowest points of this woke conservatism that we saw in 2022 that really did hurt the Republicans, and I think will still continue to hurt the Republicans. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio is holding a fundraiser. Harris had huge $540 million over the last month in terms of fundraising, including $82 million during the DNC last week. Vance defended Trump's past and potential future tariffs in an interview with NBC, denying the increased costs for Americans. He said that he did not believe Trump would sign a national abortion ban, and he dodged questions about whether mass deportations of undocumented migrants would lead to family separations. Finally, kind of an interesting thing as we're going to go around the world there with the election news. A pretty interesting gender gap is evolving. There is especially among Generation Z, much larger than the gaps among members of previous generations. And as a member of Generation Z, again, I think probably the best explanation for this is that so many people are just getting culturally right-wing politicized right now within Generation Z, especially on the guys' side, because every single major fitness or anything that guys watch online, whether it be from gaming to hunting videos, there is some sort of ambient right-wing energy in the air, where if you go on a girl's TikTok algorithm, by average in this country, they're much likely to see kind of like brat stuff, versus you see, Andrew Tate is still popping up, even on my For You page, even though I think everyone knows the kind of politics that I have. So again, interesting to see the divide happening there, and I think 2020 was a kind of a drop in or kind of a disruption in the trend, but very interesting to see that divide. I think is very much driven by online, as so many things are for our generation. As we go to the next story, a reminder, if you don't like the ads on our show, join the Supporters Club. Yeah, and again, that Supporters Club is available in the link in the description. You join it, you get an ad-free version of the episodes. I was listening back to one of the episodes like, damn, we got a lot of ads. So but let's get this for people who, actually listen to the show. Are big, it does very, very honor to have any sort of informatory role in your life. And if you find that's the case for me, then, consider becoming a Supporters Club member. Otherwise, sorry, we thank you very much for listening, but you are still going to get the ads on your feed. If you subscribe, you'll get kind of a link sent to you for, the secret special access VIP link. Anyway. So we get on to our next story, and this is a pretty interesting clip here on ABC, and this is Kamala using Trump border wall images in campaign ads after working against it. So he's talking to Bernie Sanders, but I don't think this clip shows the Bernie Sanders clip, but let's take a listen to this here from the top. This is John Carl on ABC talking to Bernie Sanders.
But if you take a look at that ad, one thing that I found striking is if you look, and I think we have the images here, there are at least 3 points in that ad that show the border wall, Donald Trump's border wall. Is it now the position of the Democrats that they favor the border wall?
We don't need to build a wall. And by definition, just plain speak, basic English language definition.
So, yeah, again, it's kind of annoying that they don't show Sanders' reply here. We're talking about investing in Tim Walsh used to talk about investing in a 25, 30-foot ladder. And we unfortunately do not have the clip of Bernie Sanders responding to that, but I think it's very, very telling. That is essentially what they're saying now. Like, they have completely capitulated the Republicans on the border, and it's just absolutely fooling nobody. And it's, it is in large part, it is and we reviewed some of the kind of the migrant numbers on this in terms of the broader trends from the entire Biden administration on a piece that I did on Substack, which I hate to do my own here, but I think is really good, which shows that, after Title 42, there was a surge kind of calmed down, and then Biden has passed the border. But again, there is no kind of opposing or tried to pass the bipartisan border bill, but he failed, and that even because a lot of it is rhetoric in terms of what people are thinking. Coming to the border, so tough talk, in a certain extent, could help. But again, we're talking about migrants, hordes coming over the border on both sides calling it a migrant invasion, as Al Sharpton did on MSNBC, which is a moment that I was just like, really just, wow, that is incredible. And it legitimizes, a lot of more, kind of migrant hatred, a lot more just distrust, a lot more just culturally normalized attacks on migrants in terms of just in any way, discrimination, whatever. And also, it does hurt our country because it's going to make policies like mass deportation more likely, which would just be a tragedy on every single level, or some kind of a lesser version of that. And it also does take away from what is a very good argument from immigration. And you could see when people were talking about in 2020, when Democrats were actually making the case for immigration, the height of the Trump era, that's when people at the end of the Trump administration, if you look at the polls, had the highest amount of support for immigration because Democrats were making the case for it. And we're saying this is why the Republican case is bad. We need this sort of pathway to citizenship. There's been no kind of real specific policies in terms of communication that I've seen in any way regarding this from Kamala Harris. I think that is a very bad mistake on the political level, on the national interest level, and on the moral level for the campaign. I thought this was really cool for a number of reasons, or actually really two reasons, because I think the concept is very good, and it is written by a former Newsflash guest who has turned big. And the coverage of the 2018 election, if you really want to scroll way, way far back in the feed, you can see that we did a show from Texas with Clara Entz Morse, who is now working at the Washington Post. I had honestly no idea because we had fallen out of touch over the years. But I met her actually at a kind of journalism event for young journalists, as weird as that sounds. But now, like in the 2018 year, and she was on my podcast then. Now she is, I'm assuming, out of college now, working at the Washington Post, and she is the lead byline. And so I just saw randomly on the front page of the Washington Post as I was looking for stories for this show called Meet the Megadonors, Pumping Millions in the 2024 Election. The 50 biggest donors this cycle have collectively pumped $1.5 billion into political committees and other groups competing in this election, according to a Washington Post analysis of the Federal Election Commission data. Also, I should say the other people as well, I guess, Louise Melgar and Maeve Reston on this piece. But always very cool to see someone who was on Newsflash doing so well. The vast majority of money from top donors has gone to super PACs, which can accept unlimited sums from individuals and often work closely with campaigns despite rules against coordinating their advertising. From billionaire investors to shipping magnates, these megadonors skew Republican, though they affiliate with both parties. Here's who they are and their top donations. So this is a kind of fun thing to get into. You go through the top 10 here in terms of the organizations and in terms of the individual people. A deceased hedge fund manager and his philanthropist wife is the number 10 donor at $24.4 million. Really small potatoes in terms of donations. You'll see as we go on here. And then that's, again, just generally interesting. Seems like something that we've seen where the kind of more liberal-minded wife takes the rich husband's money, donates it to relatively liberal causes. Fred Eichaner, who's a media executive, is a Democratic donor, goes again. Reid Hoffman and Michelle Yee, tech founder and philanthropist. I don't know if they're married or just business partners. But they have $31.6 million so far this cycle, mostly to Kamala Harris and directly. Hoffman is one of the co-founders of LinkedIn and prolific Silicon Valley investor. The couple are major philanthropists. So again, philanthropists, quote unquote. These are the people who are going to try and push the Democratic Party towards Silicon Valley and towards business in general. He has been the biggest advocate so far for firing Lina Khan, which it seems like things have been pretty good so far in terms of keeping Lina Khan, but that is very much remains to be seen. Definitely Reid Hoffman is one to watch. Robert Bigelow was a hotel magnate kind of associated with the DeSantis campaign. Paul Singer is a hedge fund manager and activist investor for the big-time kind of Trumper Republican, or actually, sorry, a Nikki Haley guy. He donated to Nikki Haley's presidential campaign. Mike Bloomberg, obviously going to be in there. Richard and Elizabeth Uihlein are big Chicago people. And these are kind of also very much business Republicans as well. Ken Griffin and Timothy Mellon are the railroad magnate and heir. They're big Trump donors. $165 million this guy has donated to the to Make America Great Again PACs. He interestingly donated $25 million to RFK's presidential campaign as well. But number 3 is Jeff and Janine Yass. They are people also deeply tied to TikTok that have donated quite a lot to Trump as well and to Republican causes as well. That's why a lot of people say he did not go so hard on TikTok. But I think more importantly are going to be the organizations that are going to be the most important people, or I guess organizations to watch. So let's go through here for the donors. The Carpenters Union at number 10, that's Democrat Conservation Voters. Democrat, they got to donate some more there. Chip in only at $25 million. No wonder why, because you have almost double so far. You have the Koch Industries, which are some of the biggest industrial conglomerate people out there. Big Republican donors at $43.3 million. Majority Forward is the Democratic PAC at 8, just general Democratic kind of centrist PAC. But here's where it gets interesting. The venture capitalist firm AH Capital Management donating to both parties. Pro-crypto PACs up and down. Pro-crypto PAC supporting Republicans and a pro-crypto PAC supporting Democrats. So this is Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz. And this is why I really want to highlight this, is because the crypto situation, I think it's just generally interesting to see all of these issues coming in and how they come in. But the crypto situation, if you go up here, Mark Andreessen, Ripple Labs, cryptocurrency firm, formerly known as OpenCoin, donates to Fair Shake PAC, which is probably one of the biggest, most successful PACs out there. There's the Soros campaign PAC is at number 3. And then one of the biggest kind of Republican anti-woke PACs is number 2. And then Coinbase, 91.1 cryptocurrency firm. So a lot of money into this crypto stuff, and a very aggressive crypto lobby is going to happen. As we've seen Kamala Harris starting to warm up to cryptocurrency already, and look for some pro-Silicon Valley policies. And again, we saw Reid Hoffman there in the individual list, just general pro-Silicon Valley and pro-business policies coming down, if you follow the money at least. There's a lot of money pouring into these campaigns. I think a lot of times following the money is a pretty darn safe thing to do. Just wanted to highlight this real quickly before we moved on. The Boeing contract for over 32,000 workers in Washington and Oregon expires next month. And workers have voted to sanction a strike. Their complaints include low pay, frozen pensions, and mismanagement that has resulted in deadly disasters for the company. And it's kind of sad on an American level to see what's happened with Boeing in terms of a company that should be one of the most proud American industrial producers, has really just been a joke of just hate to use just kind of crony capitalism and government mismanagement in terms of just not providing any oversight to these people whatsoever and just funneling money their way. Definitely something to keep an eye on in the future in terms of a very important, kind of underratedly important company, to the U.S. economy. But we do have to go now to the war on Gaza, and it's very important here. I know we had over the weekend the the strike by Hezbollah in retaliation for the assassination of one of their top commanders. Apparently just before that, there was a barrage of Israeli missiles that were hitting a certain amount, I guess we should say. Again, there's a lot of stuff we don't know. They say it's thousands. I think we have seen it's probably not thousands, but I'm sure they hit a pretty good chunk of their targets in terms of Hezbollah missile launches. They're saying, it was a preemptive attack. They're 5 minutes away from launching. There's not really been any kind of independent confirmation of that, but it does feed into the narrative of the very pro-Israel kind of propaganda win in terms of morale for them and their supporters worldwide. But Hezbollah then hits a few military bases, doesn't really do too much. And says there's going to be a second phase of the retaliation, which apparently this operation, they're saying, will take a long time, according to Nasrallah, who is the leader. So that's going to be definitely something to keep an eye on at the moment. But so far, not too much exchange, as both sides seem to want to de-escalate. But one side is definitely, in terms of Hezbollah, has said they are not done yet. But I do want to get into this piece in the Middle East side, which I think is going to be very important, by Rehan Uddin. Negotiations for an end to the 10-month-long war in Gaza have recently centered around two buffer zones controlled by Israel military. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared that under a truce agreement there will be no Israeli withdrawal from the Philadelphia and Netzarim corridors. The Philadelphia corridor, a buffer zone between Egypt and Gaza, existed for more than 4 decades, has been maintained on the basis of 2 bilateral agreements between Cairo and Israel. The Netzarim corridor cuts through central Gaza and is created in recent months by Israeli forces to monitor Palestinians. But it's also interesting, there seems to be a third corridor now going into Gaza City. That was coming out this morning, which I think is going to be very, very interesting to highlight in terms of a exact, if you're looking at plans kind of going on behind the scenes from a government that's been in power throughout this whole thing that is very, very big in terms of settlements of all kinds. They absolutely love their settlements. If you're looking for that, this is a clear sign that a lot of that stuff is going on and is hitting big stride here. Palestinian groups have firmly rejected Israeli demands on maintaining a military presence in the 2 corridors and believe that Netanyahu has added these demands to derail negotiations. So Philadelphia corridor is right there at the end of the Rafah crossing. So essentially they want to essentially control the Rafah crossing in a post-war situation, which is obviously going to be unacceptable to anyone in Palestine, in Gaza, and rightfully so. Because if you're looking at a creation of 2-state solution in the wake of this, giving real security, anything like that, that is obviously just going to be out of the question. And also having a 2 by 6 kilometer box, which is the Netzarim corridor in Gaza City. This is 6 kilometers wide, or kind of leading into Gaza City. The 6 kilometers long, 2 kilometers wide, and which is really quite remarkable. At the time, Israel has agreed to end, back in the 6 Days War, 1979. This was when the Philadelphia corridor was set up to essentially a demilitarized buffer zone, which is about 14 kilometers long and 100 meters wide. So Israeli troops are going to control there, so they're going to stop essentially Palestinians from going out, and they're going to stop or essentially cut north and south off in 2. And a lot of Gazans right now in the south at the moment, and if they want to get Gaza City, northern Gaza, Deir al-Balah, all those places, you could get up to Deir al-Balah, and then you reach essentially that corridor, and you're met with Israeli troops preventing you from going back to places like Gaza City and the refugee camps in the north of Gaza. Yeah, and you're essentially going to be met by troops there, again, indefinitely to quote-unquote control the security situation. And if you want to lay the groundwork, this is how you do it. You start to cut off these places in the Gaza Strip. You start to divide and conquer. You start to provide different rights for different places, and you start to regulate who can go in between those places. Essentially, then you start to proliferate settlements, as you've seen. This is exactly, the West Bank strategy that I'm repeating here. They're essentially creating Area A in North Gaza and Area B in South Gaza. And who knows, some of their biggest settlements were around Gaza City. So that's essentially, Gush Katif was a big one that a lot of people wanted to try and revive. But that is a very concerning situation. I think it's important to a very important highlight. Because, again, it's not going to be a ceasefire if you still have soldiers there, if you, controlling the security situation. Again, he wants them there indefinitely, which is a really big, type of situation. There would be no Israeli withdrawal from the Philadelphia and net certain corridors. So that would, it is explicitly came out by Benjamin Netanyahu, which was, again, against the deal that, quote unquote, Israel's truce deal that Biden said a few months ago in the White House, which included a full Israeli withdrawal. So again, on that front, on one level, it's concerning that they aren't going to, and are turning against the U.S. deal, and they're not going to withdraw, period. And that's kind of a joke. Ceasefire means you do withdraw from those areas, especially ceasefire. We're concerned about working towards a truce. But if you still want to keep troops in the critical points, stopping, or essentially splitting the Gaza Strip in two, and stopping them from going out through Egypt, Gazans from going out through Egypt, and with the force of the Israeli military, that sets up a stage for a much greater Israeli control, which sets up a stage, again, for occupation, which we know people in the government want, eventually, of the Gaza Strip, which should be very concerning to everyone. I want to go to a great piece on this in Mondoweiss. For decades, Netanyahu believed that a major war could provide Israel with the cover to conduct a mass expulsion of Palestinians, not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank and within Israel's 1948 borders. He was quoted as explaining this precise idea in 1977 by the British historian Max Hastings. At the beginning of the current war, Netanyahu actively attempted to push Palestinians out of Gaza before being confronted by Egypt's refusal to play along. Meanwhile, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, along with the settlement movement, have been ramping up settlement expansion and supporting settler violence in the West Bank, ethnically cleansing at least 20 Bedouin communities under the cover of war. Netanyahu's critics, who do not consider him ideologue like Smotrich or Ben-Gvir, and they may be right, but it is also irrelevant. Even though he has certainly expressed a commitment to the Zionist ideal of full territorial conquest, the point is that today, even if pushing a total victory might invite a war that will harm his state, he has no alternative given the balance of power within Israeli politics. This has turned Israel's genocidal war into Netanyahu's war of necessity. Netanyahu hopes to accomplish this by dragging the U.S. into a war with Iran, ensuring Israel's position as a sole regional power in the Middle East. Essentially, the dynamic we've talked for quite a long time of kind of getting the big guns to come and take out the bullies on the playground. This is a scenario he has been advocating for decades, including in a congressional committee in 2002, when he also urged the U.S. to invade Iraq. But things have changed since then. Israel is not a minor military power, neither is Lebanon. Things are building up. The Israeli army and economy are not ready for a major war after 10 months of losses. Earlier in July, the Israeli army said that it was suffering from a shortage of tanks as a result of the high number that were damaged and put out of service during the war, while the Israeli War Ministry said that some 10,000 soldiers and officers have been wounded, while 1,000 soldiers continue to join rehabilitation programs every month. This shortage in military personnel has led Israel to pass a law forcing Orthodox Haredim I guess is the correct way to say it, to enlist for service, overturning an exemption that has lasted for 76 years. And of course, some economic news, Israel's credit was downgraded recently by the Fitch agency to outlook negative earlier in August as a result of this war. It seems at the moment that the Israeli economy, once known for pretty good economic conditions and growth on the back of Palestinian land and labor, is facing a catastrophe. Netanyahu ordered the assassination of Fuad Shakir in Beirut and Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran after his speech in Congress, where he received nothing but standing ovations. Following the assassination and retaliation threats, the U.S. increased its forces in the Middle East in preparation to defend Israel from any retaliation. At the same time, the U.S. rushed to try and contain the situation with a new proposed deal. This included new conditions put forward by Netanyahu, which served to move the goalpost for what was considered an acceptable deal against the consideration of Israeli negotiators. Yet the U.S. has only pointed fingers at Hamas, saying that the ball is in its court. Netanyahu has been getting everything he needs from the U.S. at every step of the way, allowing him to pursue his dangerous endgame with barely any reproach. He is hoping that his gamble will pay off by providing a final solution to the Gaza question, thus emerging as a Zionist national hero. But even this presents the opportunity of snatching historic achievement from the Zionist project. It also opens up the possibility that Israel will suffer a historic setback that could usher in a new era of resistance for the indigenous peoples of the region. So that's a take there from Mondaway. Sorry to get a little bit into the reads in terms of the reading there. But I think the bottom line is very, very important, which is that he is trying to do this. His personal ambitions line up with the gains of Israel and the situation that the Israeli right, who has long been in power, are seeing this as a pretty golden opportunity to carve off at least a very big chunk of the land, I think, in Gaza. I think this is really what they're focusing on now with this ceasefire demand. Netanyahu coming out and making that demand for the Netzarim and Philadelphia corridors to be, Israeli troops kind of occupied indefinitely is good because it sabotages the deal. It creates a state of war in the short term, which helps Netanyahu in the short term. But in the long term, it sets up something that Israel, and especially the current government of Israel, has always wanted to do, which is carve off that part of Gaza and eventually settle it just in the same way they're doing in the West Bank, unabated. And again, all of the Israeli parties voted against a two-state solution just recently in the Knesset. So I think that pretty much settles it right there. I don't know about you. File this under something pretty important to watch. This is a thread by Arnaud Bertrand, who's a French journalist and writer. Quite an incredible move in French politics today that might reveal we're in fact witnessing nothing less than a coup by Macron. Let's get into it. You'll remember that on the 7th of July, France held elections that Macron lost badly, in which the left's new Popular Front, kind of a coalition of a lot of different parties, won. We're now 48 days afterward, and Macron and his government are still running the country. They basically ignored the results of the election, which is unprecedented in the history of the French Fifth Republic. Normally, as is the rule set by precedents, Macron should have nominated a prime minister from the new Popular Front as they are the winners of the election. At first, Macron argued that it wasn't convenient to change government right before the Olympic Games and argued for an Olympic truce, which, again, he called the election right before the Olympics. So it's just complete freaking out here. And Macron has long been backed by the richest people in France, it's important to say. Anyhow, we're almost 2 weeks after the end of the Olympics, and the situation is still the same. So everyone is starting to ask, what the F? Especially given that the new Popular Front has a prime minister ready, Louis Castex, a senior public servant. Now, the excuse by the Macron's camp is that they refuse a government with anyone from LFI, which is the kind of left-wing party led by the firebrand Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the main party on the left, and therefore the main party of the new Popular Front coalition. Lucy Castex is not from LFI, but some of her ministers could be. Macron has been demonizing LFI in a very similar fashion to the way Jeremy Corbyn was demonized in the UK, with accusations of anti-Semitism for their support of Gaza. But LFI, though, is literally France unbowed, and they have been fighting back against the allegations. So, which brings me to what happened this morning, which is just 2 days ago when Arnaud Bertrand wrote this, an incredible gamble by Mélenchon, who asked an open question to Macron. Say we committed to no LFI members in the government, would you nominate Lucie Castex as prime minister? This forces Macron's hand. If he says no, as Mélenchon himself wrote, it shows Macron's refusal to have LFI in government is just a pretext to deny the election results. In effect, if he says no, he openly admits that he doesn't accept the election result, even if LFI is in government. Not in government, as Mélenchon has offered in an open statement. So Olivier Faure, who leads the Socialist Party, the other big political force in the new Popular Front, backs up Mélenchon and says the pretext of the presence of LFI ministers, pretext to deny the election results, isn't valid anymore. In a way, new Popular Front government without the LFI would in itself be a denial of democracy because the most voters voted for them because LFI was part of the coalition. But this is also an act of political courage by Mélenchon and a way to put Macron in front of his contradictions. We also had some of Macron's former lieutenants reply, such as Benjamin Haddad, the former spokesperson for Macron's party, who says that a new Popular Front government is unacceptable because it'd be bad for France. And again, the people should get to decide this. So it'd be very interesting, again, to see what exactly he does here, because it would be incredibly undemocratic for an election to end without the largest party being represented in government in some way. So here's the update from today. it's now official. In a just released communique, Macron has rejected a government led by the New Popular Front. It's an unprecedented situation, and he explains it by the fact that his responsibility is to ensure the country neither be blocked nor weakened, arguing that were he to nominate a New Popular Front government, they'd soon be censored by Parliament and destituted, which is ridiculous because, again, they'd be censored probably by him. So he's just saying, don't make me do this, essentially. Don't make me disrespect democracy. Like, you shouldn't have won. You should have just been an annoying left-wing party on the outside. That may be the case, but this is awfully inconvenient, and this fact remains. Macron's party got way less votes and MPs than MPF, yet it is Macron's party that's still running the French government, and is Macron himself making choices on who can or cannot assume power based on what he thinks would weaken France or not. It's pretty insane. So it'd be a very interesting situation to watch, and a very important situation in one of the most important countries in Europe, which really had a pretty unprecedented left victory that very, very short time ago that Macron really seems to be going to some pretty extraordinary lengths to deny, and a kind of pattern that you could put onto liberals everywhere when met with a potential left-wing resurgence. So all we got for you guys. We're back on Wednesday. It's Newsflash.